Welcome back to Raid Guides in a Trenchcoat featuring Salvation's Edge, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Gall of LFG. Well, you've gotta hand it to them. The community asked for a raid harder than Last Wish, and Bungie handed it to us on a blood-soaked silver platter. The hardest raid we've seen so far, hands down. Salvation's Edge takes the Iron raid and macerates it in a blender before serving us a puree of personal responsibility, the likes of which we haven't seen since Valkuor was crushing us with his meat cabals. I'd make another joke about returning old Sunset content here, but I guess none of it is quite as old as Sepix past his prime. You'll load into the raid and immediately run a half marathon's worth of parkour as you cull a few Vex and then navigate a few last hallways before arriving at the first encounter. Substratum focuses on the Witness's monolith and how absolutely terrible its internet service provider is. If I can physically see the packets being sent, then that's when I know that there's a problem. The encounter begins by cleaning up the Witness's building block and putting it back into the toy chest. He'll then reach a hand down into the encounter, which you can ignore entirely as long as you're not getting yourself nuked by the triangle-shaped Final Fantasy AoE. Once you begin, the 8 doors in the room will close before 2 of them reopen to let in some stuff that can't catch these hands. Split yourself into 2 teams where half of you go to the door on the Salvation's Edge, and the other goes to the door on the Salvation's Corner. Clear ads as fast as you can, making sure to focus down the Minotaurs and Hydras. Once the opposite team has killed their Hydra, a door will open so that you can keep splunking your way through the Legends of the Hidden Temple until you reach an overload Minotaur. Dispatching the Minotaur floods the encounter with malware in the guise of a Tormentor. Everyone should make their way back to the main room, kill the Tormentor, and then do their temple runs over again. This time, pay attention to these portable phone chargers and the corresponding wireless charging plates. One of the portable chargers will be displaying a 2-factor authentication code, which for this encounter will, unsecurely, always be a triangle. Additionally, one of the wireless charging plates will be glowing. Kill the second malware tormentor and then have 2 players from each side stand next to either the glowing wireless charging plate or the glowing portable charger. The first player will step onto the glowing plate to send a very visible email over to the second player through the fiber optic cable embedded in the ground. The second plate will start to glow, and the second player needs to wait until they receive their email to step on and hit that bitch with a reply all. Step on too early and the ISP will get confused and fail to deliver, and if you wait too long to reply, your plate will also fizzle out and the first player will need to ping you again with a follow-up email. When the second player does this correctly, an email will then get sent back to the first player and you need to keep ping-ponging those back and forth until both of your rooms are littered with more of the Witness's building blocks. Start to pick the toys up, and when your hands start to get full, the second player can end the email chain by shooting the 2-factor authenticator right before they step on the email that was sent to them. Assuming that they had picked up at least one of the building blocks, this will cause the wireless charger to turn yellow and any remaining building blocks on your side to get magically whisked into the dumpster. Once both teams have done this, a subjugator will spawn in the center, which you should nuke down to spawn a toy chest that you can put away all the Witness's toys. There's been an impressive 4-minute timer looming on this new overhead buff bar, and each toy put away will win back 20 seconds, so deposit like 10 of them. Additionally, a subjugator can also spawn when you fail to reply to an email in time, which will lock up your ISP as if you were downloading a few hundred gigabytes of chicken Thai, and you'll need to kill him to get your bandwidth back. With all of the toys deposited, that's one phase done, and you'll need to do that whole song and dance 2 more times. Hence why extending the timer is kind of important. But also keep in mind that picking up more than 3 building blocks will kill you. This means that the 2 people who aren't sending chainmail back and forth should be picking up building blocks as well to make sure you have enough time for the next loop. Purge the malware, send your emails, charge your phones, and then after the 3rd set of dunks you'll be well on your way through the scenic walk to the second encounter. The Herald of Finality brings the Gladiator Pit fantasy to Destiny, and if I didn't know any better I'd tell our buddy Herald here to get back to the Deepstone Crypt, Wrath of the Machine, and the Shadow Thief Strike. The arena is split into 3 sides: Ogre, Phalanx, and Bitch. 2 people will start on each side, and after killing a wave or 2 of ads, the boss will slap a player from each side with the white glove of dueling, and you must heed his summons to the orange pit in the center of the arena. The player's summoned to the pit will have to shoot his head, but this little blight Horcrux will prevent you from doing so. Search the airspace for a bigger Horcrux blight and gun it out of the sky to re-enable your ability to do damage. Continue to shoot him in the head until it cracks, and you'll end up with a buff called Stolen Favor. While the dueling players are in the pit, the remaining players on each side will get a spawn of whatever their side's namesake is, so the right one gets the Ogre, etc., etc. They'll want to kill that while assisting with the blights and preparing for the next phase. You can also just wait to heed his summons until after you and your partner have done some ad clear together, but that's between you and the rest of the cowards to decide. When the duos are all reunited, begin to subtweet Herald in your back and forth emails again, where the buffless players start the chain on the upper plate and the dueled players take the lower plate with the two-factor authenticator. You'll start to spawn more of the witnesses' building blocks, and you'll notice that on top of the pyramids from before, you'll also be spawning balls. That's because the two-factor authenticator is getting more complex and can only be closed if you're holding the right resonance key. You have the same limit of picking up 3 toys of any type, but the resonance will switch depending on what the most recent toy you picked up is. Get the correct resonance to activate the two-factor authenticator, and then once all 3 sides are set, a toy chest will appear in the middle for you to deposit, extend your timer, and start the damage phase. Wail on in with whatever bullshit the damage strat evolves to 6 months from now, and return to your sides for another round of duels and emails. Similarly to last encounter, if for whatever reason you failed to reply to your emails, the plates will lock up and whatever your side's namesake is will spawn for you to kill again. This has the added weight of potentially changing the two-factor authenticator key, so it's usually best practice for your top side player to hold onto the resonance opposite your bottom side player. Dunk into the toy chest again and push him into the final stand, which is just more of the same. Figure out where you go from here, and then there's a non-trivial jumping puzzle, but it's a bit more take in this beautifully ominous vista rather than fuck you and everything your spacebar stands for. You'll scale a tower and then walk along some very botanically healthy root systems, all before arriving at the door to the third encounter. Repository is going to stress test your email sending and two-factor authenticating abilities before it ditches both mechanics for the rest of the raid. In the first room, you'll notice 3 plates with fairly linear fiber optic cables heading to the back of the room where the two-factor pylons are sat next to a whole mess of tormentors. Anybody who gets a killing blow on a tormentor will be given the stolen favor buff again so that they can receive the two-factor authentication keys for each pylon. Killing all 3 tormentors will also spawn an execution squad of Scorpius turrets that you'll probably want to deal with. Start sending emails back and forth, and you'll notice that all the toy blocks being thrown into the ground are exactly not what you need for your side. Additionally, you'll find that cubes have been thrown into the mix. Spawn an even bigger mess of blocks, then look around as you learn exactly what your house is going to look like when your 5-year-old kid is left to their own devices for the few hours that you've been in this raid. Run around filling up your hands and making sure to pick up the two-factor key you need as your final pickup, and then rush back over to your plate. Odds are in the confusion that your plate missed an email reply, so you'll have a subjugator to deal with before you can input your two-factor authentication code. Something else to be cognizant of is that your particular plate only spawns one type of block, and when that plate is locked, all of those blocks will get whisked away into the dumpster. If the person who needs that block was too busy making sure they got back all 10 replies, making them a stuffed stocking slore instead of a dry cold cunt, then they'll be entirely locked out of their two-factor shape and you'll be forced to wipe. Get everyone to light up their pylon and then deposit all of the extra toys into the toy box to once again get some extra time. More Cabal and turrets will appear guarding the door up to the 2nd level. Dispatch them and parkour your way up. In the 2nd room, you do more of the same thing except somebody's cable management got a little crossed. Follow the fiber optic cables that you know who your emails are coming from, and then do the same tormentor, building block pickup, probable subjugator kill, and then lock your pylons to spawn the toy box and ascend up to level 3. In the industry, we call this last floor Italian cable management because it's all fucking spaghetti. Nothing correlates, right goes to left, it's a whole 3-course mess of a meal. Spawn, grab, lock, and dunk your buffs, kill the last Shadow Legion, and then you'll only be a stone's throw away from the most aggressively bright white asylum room that I've seen in my life. If you thought the Vault encounter in Last Wish was confusing, then boy do I have some bad news for you. Verity takes the circle peg in a square hole meme and extrapolates it across 3-dimensional shapes in a 3-round puzzle that feels as though it was designed with Common Core mathematics in mind. At the start of the encounter, you'll actually want to play Barbie dress up and coordinate your outfits because these 5 dapper and 1 troglodyte looking statues are more or less perfect recreations of your guardians and their glams. It's going to be important to tell yourselves apart, so do something wacky. Put on a cowboy hat. Agree which 3 of the 4 warlocks will take off the Anubis head. Spend a bunch of money on silver to buy the hunter cloak that gives you very identifiable snakes. I'm suddenly seeing a little bit more of the business model here. Or, if all else fails, put on some Festival of the Lost masks because damn if those can't be very distinct. You'll also, for the first time in Destiny history, want to make sure that your ghost is easily identifiable. Grab every weird water bottle, harpy, and television set ghost you can get your hands on and make little MS Paint diagrams for your Discord telling you that Kitty Cat Ghost goes with the extra appendages root of Nightmare Body. With that out of the way, interact with this statue to start the encounter, and 3 guardians will be stuck together in Gay Baby Jail while the other 3 players are whisked away into Gay Baby Solitary Confinement. Players on the inside will see 2-dimensional circles, squares, and triangles, while the outside players will see some combination of 3-dimensional geometries. The first thing to be cognizant of is the death mechanic. Note I've said death mechanic and not wipe mechanic. That's because after the inside players interact with statues a collective total of 6 times, they'll all die and interrupt whatever they're trying to do on the inside until the outside guardians can match their ghost to the appropriate statues on the outside. This will be accomplished by an outside player picking up a ghost and having a quote-unquote dead player spectate them to be able to see one of the 3 missing guardians. Player 1 picked up the Santa's elf ghost. Player A calls out where they see the cowboy hat warlock. Because that's an awful fashion combination, player 1 knows, minimally, that won't be where the Santa's elf ghost gets dunked. Reunite all the ghosts with their guardians, then everyone can get back to the puzzle at hand. I usually try and force this ghost phase by having all the inside players immediately dunk their 2 shapes into the statue to the right of theirs off the rip, but oh boy am I getting ahead of myself. When the inside players first go in, they should call out what symbols they see left to right. This will be important for everybody and the outside players won't be able to see it. Next up, they need to identify which statue correlates to them based on the glam and what symbol they're holding. Like here where my goblin head hunter is holding a circle. Force the ghost res phase immediately if you want, then your end goal is to have one of each of the shapes besides the one that your statue is holding. You can see what shapes you currently have in your deck by looking up at the massive jumbotron as a diabolic tutor sifts through the last few cards of your library. Killing a knight will force you to draw one of the shapes out of your deck and play it face up in attack mode on the floor. If it's a shape you don't need, interact with it to pick it up, and then interact with another player's statue to target and cast it on that non-land permanent. If you ever run out of knights, kill the ogre that spawns to bring them back. Your other players on the inside can also call out what shapes they're missing so that when you inevitably get 2 circles and need to get rid of 1, you'll know exactly what to get the square player for Christmas. If you ever accidentally pick up a symbol that you want to keep, well that's too bad. You have to give it to someone else so that they can give it back to you. Once you've all got the 2 shapes you want, noting that you have to do a death phase in order to progress, pick up both of your shapes and you'll end up with a buff called something like trilateral, conical, or asparagus. Coincidentally, my 3 favorite zodiacs. The glass wall in the back of the room should now be permeable so long as the outside did their job, and then you'll be reunited with your team. Meanwhile, the outside players are going to deal with 6 different 3-dimensional shapes, which are all combinations of 2 2-dimensional shapes because in Common Core, 2 plus 2 is 3. Square plus square is cube, triangle plus triangle is pyramid, and circle plus circle is sphere. No matter what, all 3 of these shapes are wrong and will never be in position for a correct solution. That's because the goal is, much like the inside players, for each statue to be holding the shape correlating to the 2 shapes that the guardian is not holding on the inside. Listen for the call out in a triangle circle square means that the first statue needs to have not triangle, then not circle, and then not square. That's where cylinder, circle plus square, cone, circle plus triangle, and prism, square plus triangle, all come into play. You'll need to make a cylinder on the triangle player, a cone on the square player, and a prism on the circle player. To actually accomplish this, you'll also get knights who drop shapes. If the player who wants not triangle in their shape currently has a triangle in their shape, initiate a trade by handing them yet another triangle as a way of saying, hey, I want to take this triangle away from you. You'll then need to go find another incorrect 3-dimensional shape and deposit the 2-dimensional shape you want to take away from that. When 2 shapes have been deposited like this, the trade will be enacted and the 3-dimensional shapes will update. Keep going until all the 3-dimensional shapes are correct, kill unstoppable ogres when you run out of knights, and then coffin dance with the inside player's dead ghosts whenever the time comes. When both teams are done, the inside players will all come out and everyone should group up by your collection of 6 statues. Some more unstopped ogres will spawn and then 5 of the 6 players will die, forcing the last player to begin an even bigger game of pin the ghost on the invisible guardian. The dead players can call out who they see where, and you'll probably need to remind everyone 2 or 3 or 7 times which ghost shell is yours this run. When all 6 guardians are back alive, congratulations! That long-ass explanation of esoteric geometry nonsense was only 1/3 of the encounter. That's about 33% for those of you who can't do fractions either. Do the whole cycle 2 more times, and then all the light will get sucked out of the room into an elevator that brings you into the Destiny 2 port of Only Up. Make your way to the door at the top, and then ride the elevator into the final Coliseum. At long 10-year last, it's time to fight the Witness, and unlike the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th encounters basically requiring that all 6 of your teammates know what's going on, the final boss has a grand total of up to 4 ad clear positions, and it's still never enough. A Strand Subjugator spawns on the left, a Stasis one on the right, and then there are more than enough Fisherman Weavers and Overzealous Screeves being made immune by Voidscorn Captains to play your nightmares for weeks. Throughout the raid, you've seen these 3 different hands. The first encounter ceiling hands that make these triangle AoEs, The second encounter floor hands that shoot out caretaker bees into circular danger zones, and the third encounter fire in their hexahedral laser wall hands. All of these attacks now give the resonances that the toy blocks use to if you stand in them for more than half a second. The Witness got jealous of your fashion coordination in the last encounter, so he put on some armbands of his own, which if you shoot them from inside the corresponding telegraphed attack, the band will flash a color like a mood ring telling you the resonance you need to kill it. Green for being envious of all the other players that the triangle wants to target since it never wants to spawn anywhere fucking close to you. Yellow for being nervous since you have to go to the circle and poke the bee's nest. And then Ruby for vigor. You'll need to go and claim the correct resonance and then come back to the first hand to break its armband, hoping that 1. Someone didn't get trigger happy and break it for you after you went through all the effort of getting the resonance, or 2. The hand didn't disappear and come back with a different armband color while your back was turned, because I cannot begin to tell you how often that happens. Break an arm and you'll get the Glyph Breaker buff, which lets you begin to unbutton the Witness's shirt. Breaking a button while inside this tiny little pool of light will also cleanse you and anyone with you of resonances, which is great for when your ad clearers follow the breadcrumbs right into the center of the arms' attacks. At some point when one of you breaks an arm, the Witness will spring a pop quiz onto you asking you which arm you just destroyed. He'll spawn a wall of these burnt out matchsticks and you need to remove 6 to make the shape corresponding to the resonance that the arm you just killed provides. This is a fancy way of saying that the wall hand means make square, ground hand means make circle, and ceiling hand means make triangle. If you fail to remove the 6 and only 6 matchsticks to make the shape in time, the Witness will steal your spacebar before hitting you with the force of a Russian bear driving a school bus. If you make the shape correctly, the Witness will wind up and then give you the most Sugoi anime eye sparkle before flooding the arena with pure unfiltered Uru energy, killing anyone who isn't playing all flat surfaces or lava. Continue to pop open the buttons of his shirt until you have the buff to break the last one, in which case you should all group up in the little fountain of light for the damage phase. Watch as your well of radiance sinks through the floor as the Witness raises the damage platform and rips open his shirt for you to see his glorious chest hair. Fire into the highest concentration of wispy ginger hairs and then watch as his fingers do half-room AoEs one after another so that you're constantly moving between different halves of the arena and jumping whenever the overwhelming Uru fever strikes him. After 6 of the Master Hand Pistol lasers, the Witness will wind up for one final slam and you'll need to jump off of the platform before he sends you flying back to the first encounter. Do the cycle of hands, pop quiz, and dress shirt unbuttoning again to reach the final stand. In final stand, continue to wail on him. Pray that somebody calls out the finger pistol attacks while you're hard scoped in using that golden gun sniper, and then, congrats! You've completed Salvation's Edge. Pick up the loot while getting assaulted by all of the ads that weren't killed, and test out your guns in the 60 seconds Bungie left you before getting kicked out of the instance, which is a timer I really hope they patch someday. Go watch a real guide.